Jury present.
The court said, "You may continue your inquiry."
Mr. Kamraju said, "Thank you, Your Honor. I think we had up on the screen DX 2121.
By Mr. Kamraju.
Ms. Reyes, do you have it up on your screen?"
Yes.
Okay. Great. Mr. Kamraju said, "Jurors have it." Okay. So I think we talked about provision A already, so let me just go back to that quickly. So you see services are. The company shall advertise and market service providers' goods and services to its members. You see that, right?
The court said, "Mr. Kamraju, I think that the jury would benefit from just hearing again the parties to this."
Mr. Kamraju said, "100%, Your Honor. Thank you."
The court said, "Document."
Mr. Kamraju said, "Let me remind them." So let's blow back out. And let's go to the very first paragraph.
By Mr. Kamraju.
Okay. So you see here it says, "This strategic partner agreement," and then it goes on. I'm going to skip the date. It says, "Entered into by and between G Club Operations LLC." Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And that's referred to here as the company, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Yacht Life Technologies Incorporated is referred to as the service provider, right?
Yes.
Okay. And together, if you go on to the next sentence. It says, "may be referred to as the parties." You see that?
Yes.
Now let's go back to paragraph 2. All right. So you see this, right?
Yes.
Provision A.
Yes.
Okay. And you understand that what G Clubs is giving under this agreement is advertising and marketing Yacht Life's goods and services to G Club members. Right?
Yes.
Okay. G Clubs is not paying any money to Yacht Life under this agreement, right?
Correct.
Okay. But Yacht Life entered into the agreement anyway, right?
There's an agreement, correct.
Right. And Yacht Life signed it.
Yes.
Okay. And that's Yacht Life's decision to do, right?
Yes.
And you're not aware of any connection between Yacht Life and Mr. Gov't, right?
Not that I'm aware.
Mr. Kamraju said, "Okay. We can take that down. I'd like to put up just for the witness, the court and the parties DX 20235. Okay. Maybe we can just blow up the top first. Okay. And maybe we can scroll through this for Ms. Reyes. Keep going towards the signature page, please."
By Mr. Kamraju.
Okay. Do you see the signature line there?
Yes.
Okay. Who signed it on behalf of G Club's operations?
I did.
Okay. And what company is this with? Sorry. Withdrawn. That's a bad question. Who's the counterparty to this agreement other than G Clubs? Who's the contract with?
Luxury Cruise Connections.
Okay. And this was a contract for an additional set of benefits for G Club's members, is that right?
It was contract for a partner, correct.
Mr. Kamraju said, "Okay. So the defense offers DX 20235.
Mr. Finkel said, "No objection."
The court said, "It is admitted."
Defendant's Exhibit 20235 received in evidence.
Mr. Kamraju said, "Okay. So let's publish for the jury, please."
By Mr. Kamraju.
Okay. And do you see the first whereas clause, under recitals? Mr. Kamraju said, "If you can blow that up."
Yes.
Okay. Could you read that?
G Clubs is a luxury membership service with access to events, concierge services, benefits and special pricing for its members.
And when you signed this agreement, you believe that statement to be true, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now the next whereas clause, now this says company. So this is referring to the company as Luxury Cruise Connection, right?
Yes.
Okay. What does Luxury Cruise Connection do?
I don't recall specifically.
Okay. Do you recall whether it has anything to do with a cruise line?
I do recall they were working on a cruise line. I just don't know specifically.
Okay. And so what was your understanding of what G Club's members were going to get through this contract?
I'm not exactly sure. Could we look into it?
The court said, so I need for you to speak into the microphone.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. Let's go zoom out to the larger agreement, please. All right. So let's just look at 1A. Under scope of agreement.
By Mr. Kamraju.
Okay. And you see it says company, and that's Luxury Cruise Connections, right?
Yes.
Okay. And it agrees to provide members, that's G Club's members, right?
Correct.
Okay. With services and preferred terms set forth in Attachment A. Right?
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. And let's take that down. Let's go to the next paragraph. Okay. And again, it says company, and that's, again, Luxury Cruise, right?
Yes.
All right. And could you read that?
Company will provide G Clubs with a code or other means in which members can request company's preferred terms regarding the service listed in Attachment A.
Okay. And you remember yesterday on Direct Mr. Finkel asked you a number of questions about how G Club's members could access certain benefits. Right?
Yes.
And you talked about how they could access certain benefits by visiting the website, right? Or a website. Sorry.
Yes.
Right? Like a hotel website, for example.
Correct.
Right? And they would put in a code, right, to access their benefits?
Depending on, but some of them had a code, yes.
Okay. Just like what's referred to in this paragraph, right?
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. Let's look at the next paragraph. Could you read that, please?
All services offered by company under this agreement will be sold to the members directly by company.
Okay. So you understand that to mean that Luxury Cruise will market directly to the G Club's members. Right?
The services will be offered to the members directly by Luxury Cruise.
Okay. So that it's not going to go through G Clubs, right?
Correct.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. Let's keep scrolling down to the next page, please. Okay. Just let's blow up 3A. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So what's your understanding of this provision?
I'm going to read it. That G Clubs is responsible for marketing to its members the services offered by Cruise.
Luxury Cruise.
Thank you. Luxury Cruise.
Mr. Kamraju said, all right. We could take that down for now. And I'd like to pull up what's been marked for identification as DX20234. Okay. And if we can just scroll through that for Ms. Reyes.
By Mr. Kamraju.
Okay. Do you see a signature there on that page we were just on?
Yes.
Okay. And who signs for G Clubs?
I do.
Okay. And let's go back to the top paragraph, please. And do you see at the top it says Condado Vanderbilt?
Yes.
Is this a partnership with Condado Vanderbilt Hotel?
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, the defense offers DX20234.
Mr. Finkel said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 20234 received in evidence.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. So could we publish to the jury? Okay. Put it up on the screen. Now the Condado Vanderbilt is located in San Juan, right?
Correct.
It's a luxury hotel in that city.
Yes.
And is it fair to say, or withdrawn? Is it your understanding that San Juan has a pretty vibrant tourist industry?
Yes.
People come to visit Puerto Rico, right?
Yes, they do.
Particularly in the winter.
Any time of the year.
Okay. And G Clubs, when you joined G Clubs in December of 2020, the COVID pandemic was still going on. Correct?
Yes.
And that made it difficult to secure travel benefits for G Clubs, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because people weren't traveling as much anymore, right?
During that time, no.
Right. Now under this agreement, if we can just bold, do you see where it says, G Clubs will be honored? Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Could you just read that first sentence?
G Clubs will be honored a 15% off our best available rate as promoted on our hotel website with all corporate amenities included.
Okay. And could you go on to read the next sentence, please?
This discounted rate will be honored for all room categories.
Okay. So you understand that to mean whatever kind of room at the Condado, they will receive a discount. Right?
Correct.
And that's available specifically to G Clubs members under this agreement, right?
Correct.
Do you know how much a room runs at the Condado?
It depends on the season.
Fair enough. How about peak season?
I'm not exactly sure, but I've seen a little bit over 500.
Mr. Cumraju said, now we can take out the blowout for a second. Now can we look at the, scroll down to the signature. Okay. Do you see the date you signed this?
Yes.
January 16th, 2023, correct?
Yes.
That's months after G Clubs got the subpoena, correct?
Yes.
And that's months after there was a seizure of G Clubs accounts, correct?
Yes.
So despite those events, you continued trying to secure benefits for G Clubs members, right?
Yes.
In fact, you tried to secure benefits for G Clubs members throughout your time at the company, correct?
Yes.
It was your job, right?
Part of my job, yes.
Okay. And you remember Mr. Finkel asked you a number of questions about the G Club's website on Direct? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And he took you through the website and he said, did G Clubs offer this service, right? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you responded not at that time, right?
Yes.
And in one instance you responded, we were working on it but we didn't have it yet, right?
Yes.
Because G Clubs was an evolving company, right?
Yes.
You were building, right?
Correct.
And you had started during the pandemic, right, at least when you joined?
Yes.
And you were open about that with people, right?
What do you mean by open?
Well, you weren't telling vendors that we're a fully formed company with all of our benefits put together, right?
No.
And you weren't telling prospective members that, right?
I don't believe I was telling prospective members
The court said, okay.
anything.
The court said, I need for you to get really close to that microphone because it's sounding like a whisper.
The witness said, sorry.
Can you repeat it, please?
Mr. Cumraju said, all right. I'm going to trouble the court reporter, if she doesn't mind, to read it back, please.
The court said, go ahead.
Record read.
Anything, right? That was the answer.
On the COVID.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I wasn't asking about COVID specifically. I was saying, You weren't telling prospective members that all of G Club's benefits were available right up at the front. Right? That was not part of G Club's marketing, right?
Mr. Finkel said, objection. Compound, form.
The court said, I'm going to permit the question.
There were ongoing benefits.
Right. Additional benefits would be added down the line, right?
Over time, yes.
Okay. So there were some benefits to start, right?
Correct.
And when you joined, that included the G fashion discount, right?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said you may answer.
Yes, that was already in place.
Okay. And then, during your time as CEO, you added additional benefits, right?
Correct.
And then you were seeking even more benefits, right?
Correct.
'Cause that was your job.
It was part of my job, yes.
Now among the benefits that you were looking for potential G Club members. You were looking for immigration services, right?
I do not recall looking for that.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay. Just for the witness, I'd like to see if I can help you. Can we just pull up for her DX 34063? I'm sorry. Actually, can we do DX 34064? My apologies. This is just for the witness and the parties and the court.
By Mr. Kumraju.
All right. Can you take a look at that? Okay. And just let me know when you're ready.
I read it.
Okay. So don't read anything off the document out loud. My question is solely, does looking at this document refresh your recollection as to whether G Clubs was looking into a potential immigration services for its members?
I do not recall this document.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay. We can take it down then. Do you remember looking for a bespoke luxury travel service through something called Internova?
No, I do not recall that name.
Okay. How about looking for concierge services through a company called Bold Luxury?
I do recall concierge service. I don't really know the name, but I do recall that.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay. Can we just show the witness, the court, and the parties DX 31571? If you can just take a look at that for yourself.
Yeah.
Mr. Kumraju said, and if we can scroll through it for Ms. Reyes.
Would you mind scrolling to the bottom?
Of course. Let's keep going.
Yes.
Okay. Does this refresh your recollection as to whether that company was called Bold Luxury?
Bold Luxury was a company for travel and transportation services.
Okay. And that was a company that G Clubs was seeking a partnership with, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, as part of your responsibilities as a CEO, did you prepare a business plan to send to banks?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Did you revise a business plan that was going to be sent to banks?
Not that I recall.
Do you recall ever revising a G Club's business plan for any purpose?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So you remember doing so?
Best of my recollection, there was a business plan created, yes.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay. Could we pull up for the witness and the parties and the court DX 60604, please? Do you recognize this?
Could you scroll?
Of course. Please. Take your time. Do you recognize this document, Ms. Reyes?
Yes, I recall it.
What is it?
The business plan.
Okay. And you were involved in revising this business plan?
Me and other people, yes.
Sure. Not just you, you were one of the people who commented on it, right?
To review it, yes.
Okay. And this is a draft?
Looks like a draft, yes.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay. The defense would offer DX 60604.
Mr. Finkel said, may I inquire?
The court said you may.
Voir dire examination. By Mr. Finkel.
Ms. Reyes, do you know if this draft was sent out, this version?
I'm not sure.
Mr. Finkel said, objection, hearsay, and relevance.
The court said, are you offering it to show that there was a draft?
Mr. Kamraju said, yeah, just that they were discussing it internally, that's all.
The court said, do you recognize the document?
The witness said, I recognize the document, the format of it.
Mr. Finkel said, we object to it for that purpose as well, internal discussion.
The court said, overruled. You may ask your question.
Mr. Kamraju said, thank you, Your Honor. Can I publish it to the jury?
The court said yes.
Defendant's Exhibit 60604 received in evidence.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. Thank you. Can we publish it to the jury, please?
By Mr. Kamraju.
Okay. Now, Ms. Reyes, you testified that a number of different people commented on this, correct?
It wasn't just me that reviewed this document.
Sure. Do you remember who else within the company reviewed it?
Legal.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you about any of the discussions with legal. Do you remember if there was anybody other than legal who reviewed it?
I don't recall at the time.
Mr. Kamraju said, okay. Can we scroll down, please? Keep going. Keep going. All right. Do you see under proposed future benefits, subsection B?
Yes.
Can you look at one?
Yes.
Okay. What's one?
Multi-membership.
Okay. And can you just read that?
We foresee a member would purchase multiple memberships for access to multiple benefits and inheritance reasons. Exclusive benefits for our multi-members may include the ability to have multiple participations in events like the summits and talks, as well as promotions offered in those events.
And what was the purpose of developing a business plan at this time?
I'm not sure at the time. But I do recall the business plan was part of the requirements for the tax incentive decree.
Okay. Can you just explain to the jury what tax incentive decree you're talking about?
It's the Act 60 tax incentive.
Okay. Without getting into too many particulars, that's a Puerto Rican law of some sort.
It's a Puerto Rican tax incentive.
And it creates certain kinds of tax incentives for certain kinds of businesses in Puerto Rico?
I'm not exactly sure how it specifically incorporates the tax incentive.
But G Clubs was benefiting from that incentive, right?
Correct.
Okay. And can you explain to us how this document connected to the G Clubs receiving the tax incentive? Withdrawn. Let me pull it back from this document. Why was G Clubs creating a business plan in connection with the tax incentive?
To the best of my recollection, it was a requirement.
Okay.
The court said, are you saying that it was a requirement in order to qualify for the benefit?
The witness said, in order to submit, correct, to apply for the Act 60 benefit.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did G Clubs submit for that benefit?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you submit an application to a Puerto Rican governmental entity to get that benefit? Not you, G Clubs, I mean.
It's a Puerto Rican entity, correct.
Okay. Do you know who gets the application?
Can I say it in Spanish, the name of the agency?
It's up to your honor. I don't know if that.
The court said you can say it. Go ahead.
Departamento de Desarrollo Económico y Comercio. So Department of Economic.
Just whatever you remember is fine. It's a Puerto Rican governmental department of some sort.
Yes.
Okay. Can we now go to, in the same proposed future benefits section, number 5? Okay. Do you see this?
Yes.
All right. So this is, again, a discussion about physical clubs, correct?
Yes.
And this is what was being discussed within G clubs, right?
Correct.
Okay. Do you see where it says? Our members will be able to enjoy the benefits and amenities of the club including, and then it lists a number of things. And then it says, allowing them to securely congregate in luxury with other like-minded individuals. Do you see that?
Yes.
What's your understanding of the phrase, allowing them to securely congregate in luxury with other like-minded individuals?
For them to meet in luxury, like in high-end, with other like-minded people.
And what about the phrase, securely?
Not exactly sure. Secure.
Sorry. I didn't hear you.
I'm not exactly sure what does it mean specifically. It's like a safe place?
Okay. Now you understood this was going to a government department of some sort, right?
Yes.
And it was to enjoy some kind of benefit, right?
Correct.
It was important for this to be accurate, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now you testified. Mr. Kumraju said, we can take that down. You testified about a trip that you took to London, England. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Were there 2 trips to London or just one?
Just one.
Okay. And while you were in London, you toured a castle in the English countryside, right?
There were 2 hotels.
Okay. 2 hotels. All right. And you were touring them in your capacity as G Club CEO, right?
Correct.
All right. It wasn't a personal trip to go see them, right?
No.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay. Could we show the witness and the parties DX60595? Is this a photograph of one of the hotels that you toured?
Yes.
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of one of the hotels?
I'm sorry?
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of that hotel? Does it look like the hotel that you toured?
Yes.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay. The defense offers DX60595.
Mr. Finkel said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60595 received in evidence.
Mr. Kumraju said, could we publish it, please? All right. So do you remember what the name of this place was?
I'm not exactly sure. Glutenton, PH, or something like that if I'm not mistaken.
All right. But it's a luxury hotel, right?
Yes.
And the idea was that it could be rented out for G Club's members, right?
It could be offered as a benefit for members.
And specifically for G Club's members, right?
Correct.
And there were a number of G Club's members who lived in Europe, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this might be convenient for them, right?
Would be a benefit for them.
Sure. Now you said there were 2 properties you looked at, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, before we go to that one, did you actually tour this hotel?
Yes.
Was it pretty luxurious?
Pretty nice, yes.
Pretty big?
Yes.
Do you remember how much a room cost at that hotel?
No. I don't remember specifically.
Okay. Do you remember if it was more than what the Condado charged at the peak?
I believe so.
Okay. A lot more.
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. Now we were going to the second property. You said there was a second one that you also toured. Right?
Yes.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay. Could we show Ms. Reyes what's been marked as DX60597? All right. Is this a photograph of the other hotel that you visited? Oh, I'm sorry.
It looks like it, yes.
Okay. And this photograph depicts that hotel, is that right?
Yes.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay. The defense offers DX 60597.
Mr. Finkel said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60597 received in evidence.
Mr. Kumraju said, okay. Could we publish it, please? Okay. So again, you actually toured this hotel?
Yes.
All right. And pretty luxurious, fair to say.
Yes.
Pretty expensive, right?
Yes.
Lots of services for guests of the hotel.
They had different services, yes.
Continued on next page. By Mr. Kumraju.
Was there a spa?
Yes.
Were there conference rooms?
I don't remember.
Places for guests to meet?
Yes.
Bar maybe?
Yes.
All right. Now, Mr. Gwa never asked you to tour any other places, right?
No.
He never spoke to you about them at all, right?
Not that I recall.
You never told him you was going to look at them?
No.
You never told him about the island you were looking for, right?
Not that I recall.
You didn't communicate any of that with the spokesperson for G clubs, right?
Could you repeat?
Sure. It's okay. You didn't communicate anything about these particular properties to Mr. Gwa, correct?
Not that I recall.
You never had a discussion with him about it, right?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Now, did you fly commercial to London? No. Withdrawn. You testified on direct that you took a private jet, correct?
Yes.
Was that a G Club's jet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you know if G Club chartered the jet?
I don't believe so.
Do you know who owned the jet?
I'm not sure.
We could take that down. G Club's operation, that was based in Puerto Rico, right?
Yes.
And it had a parent company that I think you referred to it as International, right, or BVI?
Yes.
BVI owned 100% of operations, right?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. BVI owned 100% of operations, right?
I'm not exactly sure. BVI was on top of G Club operations.
Let me ask the question this way. You refer to Mr. He as the owner, right?
Correct.
He was the owner of G Club BVI.
To my understanding, yes.
And through that he was the owner of operations, right?
Correct.
And you had that email exchange with him where you said, I'm not trying to be the owner, I'm paraphrasing, right, 'cause he was the owner, right?
Yes.
And you knew that G Clubs was trying to expand internationally, correct?
What do you mean expand internationally?
There was an effort to build the company out in the Middle East, right?
I was not involved in that.
But you were aware of it, right?
I was told at some point.
You knew that Alex Hadjikaralambis, you knew that he was the controller of G Club's operations, right?
Yes.
And he went to the Middle East as part of that effort, right?
Mr. Finkel said, objection. She testified she knows about this based on what she was told.
The court said, do you know whether he went to the Middle East?
The witness said yes, he went to the Middle East.
Just to stay on Alex for a second, his responsibilities as controller were to manage bank accounts. Is that correct?
Yes.
Manage the company's cash flow, right, keep track of it.
Of the accounts?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Keep track of the money going out and coming in, right?
He had access.
That wasn't your job, right?
No.
You had other responsibilities.
Yes.
When Mr. Finkel asked you all those questions about the loans being repaid, you weren't looking at the bank accounts to see if that happened, right?
The court said, I can't hear you.
No, I didn't.
The court said, speak up.
Could you repeat that?
So when Mr. Finkel asked you those questions about whether the loans had been repaid, do you know what loans I'm referring to?
Yes.
When he asked you the questions about that, it wasn't your job to go look at the bank statements to see if the loans had been repaid, correct?
I did not look at the bank statements.
And that wasn't your responsibility?
I didn't view that as my responsibility.
There were other people at the company responsible for that, right?
Yes.
Because in a company you can have a division of labor, right?
Yes.
The CEO is not necessarily responsible for everything, right?
I don't believe so.
You had several departments that reported to you, right?
Yes.
And you relied on their advice, right?
Yes.
Now, you testified about meeting Mr. He and Miles Sun Gua on a yacht outside of Europe, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember approximately what year that was?
2021.
Do you remember if it was in the summer, when it was generally?
September.
And so do you think you'd recognize Miles Sun today?
I'm not exactly sure.
Could we pull up, it's already in evidence, GXHN 82, please and publish it. Do you see it?
Yes.
Do you recognize that guy?
I'm not exactly sure, no.
We can take it down. On direct you did recognize Mr. He, right?
Yes.
And Mr. He owned 100% of BVA, right?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
So Mr. He controlled all of the assets in the company, right?
What do you mean by control the assets?
I mean he made the decision about where certain money would go, right?
Yes.
So he asked you to make certain loans, right?
Yes.
And you made them, right?
Made loans, yes.
And sometimes he asked you for loans to make investments, right?
There were different purposes for the loans.
So, for example, one time he asked for a loan to make an investment in something called Yield Esta. Right?
I recall Yield Esta.
And Mr. He asked you to put money into that company, right?
It's not a to my understanding it's not a company.
What's your understanding of what it is?
It's a product from a bank, like a bank account.
It's an investment product of some sort.
I'm not exactly sure. It's among, like, the account in the bank. You had to have the Yield Esta. The funds.
G Clubs transferred $3 million to Yield Esta at the start of the relationship with Mercantile Bank. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And what did you understand the $3 million was going to be doing?
It was funds in that account in order to have our account.
So the money was just going to sit there.
I understood that it was going to be there for a period of time.
And then what would happen next?
I'm not sure.
Were you involved in transferring the $3 million to Yield Esta?
I do the transfer?
In any way were you involved in that transfer, not that you just pressed the button. But in any way were you involved?
I don't recall specifically. I recall the Yield Esta.
How did you find out about it then?
About who? About Yield Esta.
The $3 million that G Clubs put in Yield Esta, how did you find out about it?
That was a product that was provided by Mercantile Bank.
Mr. Kumraju said, motion to strike.
The court said, he was asking you how did you come to know about Yield Esta?
By Mercantile Bank.
Mercantile told you.
That was their product.
And how did you find out that $3 million was invested by G Clubs into Yield Esta?
I believe that was a requirement. To open an account with them, you had to do. You have to have that amount in Yield Esta account.
So Mercantile, your understanding is that Mercantile told you that you had to invest this money?
Correct.
And how did you find out that G Clubs in fact invested that amount of money?
How did I find out?
Yes, Ma'am.
I'm not exactly sure.
Are you done?
I don't remember.
Now, Mr. He also decided to invest in something called Hamilton, right?
There was a loan, correct?
And Mr. He is the one who directed that the loan should happen, right?
I'm not exactly sure. It would come from Yvette or Mr. He.
You understand, even if it came from Yvette, it was coming from Mr. He.
Yes.
And Mr. He signed off on using those loan proceeds to go to Hamilton, right?
He would sign off on the loan documents, yes.
And you were aware that those loan proceeds were going to Hamilton, right?
I'm not exactly sure.
Let's pull up what I believe is in evidence as GXGC 175. You see that?
Yes.
This is an email from you to Mr. He, right?
Yes.
And it's concerning a $50 million investment. Do you see that?
Yes.
So what did you mean when you wrote? I'm writing with regards to the $50 million investment from G Club International BVI into Hamilton Digital Assets.
That's how the loan documents end. Resolutions would be referenced as.
To write this sentence, you had to know that there was going to be a $50 million investment by BVI into Hamilton Digital Assets. Right?
Mr. Finkel said, objection, mischaracterizes.
The court said, sustained.
So again, what did you mean?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
What did you mean specifically about into Hamilton Digital Assets?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Why did you send this email?
Every time there was a loan across, I would send Mr. He the different loan documents and resolution for him to sign off on.
And which loan request did this pertain to?
A $50 million loan to Hamilton Digital Assets.
Do you remember testifying about this exhibit with Mr. Finkel on direct?
No, I do not.
So earlier today you have no recollection about talking about this exhibit?
I don't recall specifically.
What was your understanding of what was going to happen with this $50 million once it got to Hamilton?
I do not know.
Did you ask anybody to find out?
I do not recall.
You don't recall if you asked anybody?
I do not recall if I asked anyone.
Did you consider it part of your responsibilities as CEO of the company to know what was going to happen to this money?
No.
That wasn't your job, right?
I didn't view that as me asking.
That was Mr. He's decision, right?
It was an instruction from Mr. He.
And it was his decision to make, right?
Yes.
That's why you didn't ask him any questions about it, right?
I didn't view as asking questions, no.
I'm sorry.
I didn't view as asking questions, no. It was his instruction.
And that was his instruction to give, right?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Now, do you remember being asked on direct some questions about Mr. He using a Proton email account? Right?
Yes.
And you see here he's using a Proton email account, right?
Yes.
But you knew that was Mr. He, right?
That was Mr. He's email?
That's the email you used to communicate with him, right?
Yes.
He wasn't hiding it from you, right?
No, I can see it.
Now. On direct, Mr. Finkel asked you whether you knew why he used a Proton email account and you had a G Club account. Remember that?
Yes.
You're an employee or at the time withdrawn. At the time you were an employee of G Club's operations. Correct?
Yes.
And you got your email account from G Club's operations, correct?
Yes.
Mr. He was not an employee of G Club's operations, correct?
No.
He was the owner, right?
Yes.
You also talked about on direct how Mr. He talked to you about Puerto Ricans being slow. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And he would complain about the pace of your work, right?
Yes.
Now, you said that you spoke to Mr. Gov't frequently. Do you remember that?
Mr. Finkel said, mischaracterizes.
The court said, sustained.
How often did you speak to Mr. Gov't?
When I went to New York, if he was in the office.
Never spoke to him in Puerto Rico?
No.
Now, Mr. Gov't was always nice to you, right?
Yes.
He was polite, right?
Yes.
He didn't make any comments about Puerto Ricans being slow, right?
No.
He didn't do any of that, right?
No.
And even at the dinner that you had with him, the one that Mr. Finkel asked you about, right? You remember that dinner?
Yes.
And that occurred after G Club had gotten the subpoena, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Finkel asked you questions about Mr. Govt's comments about loyalty, right?
Yes.
He didn't tell you that you had to be loyal, right?
Not that I recall, no.
He talked about the loyalty that his brother showed to an ideal, right?
Yes.
And that loyalty got his brother killed according to Mr. Gov't at that dinner, right?
Yes.
That's what he talked to you about loyalty, right?
Yes.
Now. You talked about on direct how you didn't discuss the structure of the loans that you testified about with Ms. Wang. Do you remember that?
Mr. Finkel said, mischaracterizes.
The court said, sustained.
Did you discuss the structure of the loans from operations to BVI with anybody at G Clubs?
To the best of my recollection with legal.
I'm not asking about legal. But based on your conversations, what was your understanding as to why it was being done that way?
I don't recall. That's how it was structured.
Now. You also testified on direct that there was a loan request that an in-house attorney told you not to do, right?
Mr. Finkel said, mischaracterizes.
The court said, sustained. Are you talking about the $5 million?
Mr. Kamraju said, she testified that a lawyer told her not to do it.
The court said, she didn't characterize it as a loan.
My apologies. I'll withdraw it. The $5 million transaction, fair enough. You know the one what I'm talking about?
Yes.
An in-house lawyer at G Clubs told you not to do it.
Not to execute on that.
When did that happen?
The end of 2022. I don't know exactly the month. I don't recall exactly the month.
So after you got the subpoena?
To the best of my recollection, yes, correct.
You didn't quit, right?
When?
At that time when the $5 million got executed, you didn't quit, right?
No, I didn't.
And you didn't think you were committing any crime at that time either, right?
No, I did not.
And that's true even though you were going against that lawyer's advice, right?
Correct.
I want to talk a little bit about refunds. Remember you were asked about that on direct?
Yes.
Now, G Club did allow people to cancel their membership, right?
Yes.
And it's not really a cancellation, but G Club members could let their memberships lapse, right?
What do you mean by lapse?
If there was an annual fee, they had to pay, right?
Yes.
And that was in addition to whatever the initial fee they paid, right?
Correct.
Just by way of the example, they may have paid $50,000 for the initial fee. And they would have some rolling annual fee going forward, right?
They had their initial fee and annual fee, correct.
And if they stopped paying their annual fee, then I think you said that their account was deactivated. Right?
Yes, there was a term to it.
I'm sorry.
There's a specific term, it's deactivated.
And they couldn't use the services anymore.
They couldn't use the benefits, correct.
But G Club did allow for you to, just for a member, to just cancel straight out their membership, right?
There was a cancellation period.
There was a period of time in which that could happen, right?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Gov't did not set that period of time, right?
Not that I recall.
And when it changed from 3 days to I think you said it was either 12 or 14 days, right?
Yes.
You didn't consult Mr. Gov't about that change either, right?
Not that I recall, no.
That was AG Club's corporate policy, right?
It was AG Club policy, yes.
And the policy was that if somebody asked for a refund outside of the, let's just use 14-day window, they were entitled to a refund, yes.
If it was outside of the 14 days, they were not entitled to a refund.
Was there a process at G Clubs about processing refunds?
Yes.
Could you describe it for the jury?
The ones that were outside or the ones what type of 3-day or the 14-day?
Let's say one came in within 2 days, what happens then?
Member would send an email to us. That email would be sent to legal. Legal would review what we call the ticket, and they would approve or deny the request for the cancellation.
Were you involved in that process at all?
Not on the process of approving or denying cancellation.
To your knowledge, was Mr. Gov't involved in that process?
No.
What happens if a member submitted, let's use the 3-day period for right now. Okay.
Yes.
Let's say a member submitted it 6 days outside of the refund period, is there a different process?
It's the same process. The evaluation is different.
How is the evaluation different?
Because it's outside the period, so that won't get cancelled.
So if somebody submits outside the period, they don't get a refund, right?
At some point they did not, yes.
Now, you testified on direct about knowing what the farms were. Do you remember that?
Could you repeat that?
You know what the farms are, right?
I'm not exactly sure how they work.
You have a general understanding as to what they are is all I'm asking.
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered, mischaracterizes.
The court said, sustained.
Do you have a general understanding?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Were the farms involved in the refund process at G Clubs?
Not that I recall.
During your time at G Clubs, do you remember how many refund requests there were?
No.
Ballpark?
I'm not sure.
More than 100.
I believe so.
More than 1,000.
I'm not sure, could have. I'm not sure.
You testified also about sweepstakes, right?
Yes.
Now, some of the people who won the sweepstakes, they live in China.
Yes.
And could G Clubs ship a prize to China?
The ability to do it or if it was received.
Well, was it your understanding that G Clubs could ship like a Lamborghini to China?
No, we cannot ship a car.
And you're not aware if Mr. Gov't ever telling you not to give a sweepstakes winner a prize, right?
Not that I recall.
Let's stick with cars for a second. Now, you met Mr. Gov't, Miles' son Gov't, on a yacht. And he discussed how he liked race car driving, right?
Yes.
It was your impression that he was pretty well connected in that world, right?
To my understanding, yes.
In fact, he connected G Clubs with the Bugatti dealership, right?
That's what I was told.
Could we publish Government Exhibit 227, please? And we can publish this for the jury, please. Do you see it?
Yes.
This is an email you received from Lonnie Souza, right?
Yes.
And you can see that he's the president of Post Oak Motor Cars, right?
Yes.
And this is relate to the Bugatti that G Clubs purchased, right?
The Bugatti, yes.
You see the date that this was sent November 1st, 2021, right?
Yes.
Could we go to page 3, please? You see a customer name there.
Yes.
Who's listed there?
Miles' son Gov't.
Could we bring up alongside that GX 230 which is also in evidence? You see the document on the right?
Yes.
That's another email from Mr. Souza to you, right?
Yes.
And it's dated November 12, 2021, right?
Yes.
And it's about that same Bugatti purchase?
Yes.
Can we go to page 4, please? You see this?
Yes.
You see the customer name?
Yes.
Who's listed as the customer's name there?
G Club International Limited.
Did you tell Mr. Souza to make that change?
I don't remember.
Do you know if there was any other G Club employees communicating with Mr. Souza about this purchase?
Not that I was aware of.
Do you know why this change was made?
The loan was to G Club International Limited.
Not to Milsun Gua, correct?
Correct.
Milsun Gua wasn't buying this car, right?
Not to my understanding.
Even though his name is on this customer spec on the left side, right?
Yes.
Now, you were asked whether Bugatti was ever made available to G Club members, right?
Not sure the Bugatti, or I'm not sure if it was the Bugatti or the Lamborghini, not sure.
Do you know, withdrawn? Do you know if the Bugatti ever left the lot?
The dealership?
Yeah.
To my understanding, no.
So you have no way of knowing if it ever could have been made available to G Club members, right?
Mr. Finkel said, calls for speculation.
The court said, you can answer whether you know whether it was made available.
To my understanding, it was not made available.
Now, Mr. Finkel asked you about your role in picking the Lamborghini. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Prior to your time as CEO of G Club, had you ever bought a Lamborghini before?
No.
Did you ever negotiate a Lamborghini sale?
No.
Ever toured a Lamborghini facility?
No.
You ever visited a Lamborghini dealership?
No.
Did you ever dream about buying a Lamborghini?
Dreamed?
Yeah.
No.
Fair to say you didn't have a lot of experience with purchasing Lamborghini-S.
No.
He also asked you about camper vans that G Club purchased. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You ever seen a video of Mr. Gua camping?
No.
You ever seen Mr. Gua advertise a camper in a video?
No.
You ever heard anyone say Mr. Gua went camping?
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
No, I've never heard.
So as the CEO of G Club, you were aware that the Bugatti was being purchased, right?
Yes.
And you were aware that the Lamborghini was being purchased, right?
Yes.
And you knew that both cars were supposed to be delivered to Connecticut, right?
I don't remember the delivery specifically.
You don't remember Mr. Finkel was asking about what CT means.
I know what CT means. I didn't remember knowing that it was going to be delivered there.
Now, you testified that there were a lot of G Club members in New York, right?
There are G clubs in New York, yes.
Now, was it your understanding that before any of these cars could be used, there had to be special insurance obtained, right? There had to be insurance obtained, right?
Yes.
And G Club was having trouble obtaining that insurance, right?
They were working on it.
They were working on it, right?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
Withdrawn. And you testified on direct, I believe, that you had approached a firm of some sort to handle that rental situation. Is that fair?
It was a firm to work with future benefits of renting for members, yes.
And that was in 2022, right?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
G Clubs pay the firm.
I believe so.
So the firm was working on it, right?
Yes.
Now, you testified that you saw the Lamborghini being driven by Mr. Gua in a video, right?
Not driven.
Please tell me.
It was a Lamborghini that was like showcased on a video.
Got it. So he showcased it in a video, right?
Yes.
And you were concerned because the Lamborghini wasn't ready yet for consumption by G Club's members. Right?
G Club had not put in place or offered that sort of service.
It was still working on whatever it needed to offer that service, right?
Correct.
And you in fact never heard that Mr. Guo was actually driving the Lamborghini, right?
Mr. Finkel said, objection, hearsay.
The court said, you can testify as to what you know.
I'm sorry.
The court said, do you know if he was driving the Lamborghini?
The witness said, I didn't see him driving. It was just like parked.
And you never heard anything similar about a video involving him and the Bugatti, right?
Mr. Finkel said, same objection. What she heard hearsay.
The court said, talk about what you know as opposed to what you heard.
I didn't know of him driving a Bugatti.
Now, before somebody could become a G Club member, there was a vetting process, right?
What do you mean a vetting process?
There was like a 30-day period between when the application was submitted and when G Clubs would accept it. Right?
I don't remember that.
Was it instantaneous?
The approval?
MMHM.
Members would fill out the application. And once it was received and payment was received, then they would get approved.
Was there ever any kind of requirement what was called KYC?
Yes, there was a time.
When was that?
That was, best of my recollection, either late 2022 December or early 2023.
Do you remember Alex H. having to work on sort of a reconciliation project pairing membership agreements with money that was coming in?
Member payments needed to be reconciled.
Just so we're saying the same thing, what do you mean when you say they needed to be reconciled?
When a member receives a payment. When we receive a member payment that has to match the application on the system.
And Alex H. was handling that on the G Club side.
Under financing.
And given the amount of money coming in, that was a bit overwhelming for the company, right?
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You can answer if you thought it was overwhelming.
There were a lot of member payments.
That's why you brought in Crane, right?
I did not brought in Crane.
Withdrawn. That's why G Clubs brought in Crane, right?
I'm not exactly sure the reason.
Remember you were shown a picture of Haitham Khaled on Direct?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion about his character for truthfulness?
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
The court said, so if you'll step up, please.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, so you need to lay a foundation if you're going to ask about character.
Mr. Kumraju said, just to be clear for the record. I'm relying on 608A. The witness's credibility may be attacked if supported by testimony about the witness's reputation for having a character for truthfulness or untruthfulness.
Mr. Finkel said, when has the character been attacked?
Mr. Kumraju said, it says may be attacked.
Mr. Finkel said, the last sentence. Evidence of truthful character is admissible only after the witness's character for truthfulness has been attacked.
Mr. Kumraju said, Ms. Shroff extensively attacked his character.
Ms. Shrofa said, I attacked his character.
The court said, you've got to establish how she knows his reputation.
Mr. Kumraju said, fair enough.
Continued on next page. In open court, jury present. By Mr. Kumraju.
I'm going to withdraw that last question and ask you this. Did you have interactions with Mr. Khaled while you were at G Club?
Yes.
What were those interactions?
He was looking at the very beginning for business office space and in charge of banking.
And was he involved in G Club's dispute with Crane?
He was, yes.
And as a result of your interactions with Mr. Khaled, did you develop a view as to his character for truthfulness?
The court said, you need to lay a foundation with respect to reputation. And reputation is developed by speaking with others.
Did you ever speak with others about Mr. Khaled's reputation for truthfulness?
If I spoke with other people if Mr. Khaled was truthful?
Yes.
I don't remember.
That's your answer. You don't remember. Okay. Was your understanding that Crane was holding on to money that G Club wanted to be processed, correct?
Crane had G Club money.
Crane had G Club money, right?
Yes.
And G Club wanted that money back, right?
We wanted the money, yes.
At the time that Crane was holding on to the money, G Clubs had access to other money, right?
Could you repeat that?
Sure. At the time that Crane was holding on to the money, G Clubs had access to other funds, right?
Depending on the time, because there were times that we had banking issues.
During the period of the dispute with Crane, did your salary ever go unpaid?
No.
Are you aware of any employee's salary being unpaid at this time?
No.
Did you continue to work to obtain benefits during the Crane's dispute?
Yes.
So G Club's operation were continuing during the time of the Crane dispute, correct?
Yes.
And it was funding those operations with money outside of Crane's control, right?
Yes.
Now, you testified on direct that you gave some untruthful answers during that arbitration, right?
Yes.
When did you first realize that you had given inaccurate answers in the arbitration?
After I read the transcript.
When was that?
When I was with my attorneys.
I just want to make sure. Your personal attorneys?
Yes.
Again, I don't want you to tell me anything. But I believe you testified on direct that your personal attorneys. You retain your personal attorneys after Mr. Gu's arrest, correct?
Yes.
So when did you first realize that you had made inaccurate statements in the arbitration? Before or after you first met with the prosecutors?
Before.
Say that again.
The question is if I.
Let me try to rephrase it. Let me see if I can break it down. You first met with the prosecutors in this case, the folks at this table in August of 2023, right?
I don't recall the date.
Was it several months after the arrest?
It was after, yes.
It wasn't weeks after, right?
No.
It was months after, right?
Yes.
And did you realize you had given inaccurate answers in the arbitration during that period between Mr. Gu's arrest and your first meeting with the prosecutors?
Yes, while I was reviewing with my attorneys.
Okay. Now, during your first meeting with the prosecutors, you didn't tell them that you had given inaccurate answers in the arbitration, did you?
Could you repeat that?
In your first meeting with the prosecutors, you did not tell them that you had given inaccurate or misleading answers during the arbitration.
I don't remember what I said during that first meeting.
In fact, the issue about you giving misleading answers in the arbitration was first raised by the prosecutors after your first meeting with them. Correct?
I don't recall that.
And your lawyer had multiple meetings with the prosecutors about that subject, correct?
I'm not sure what my lawyers said on those meetings.
Your lawyers are in the room, right?
Yes.
Your lawyers have a habit of going off on their own.
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
When did you first tell the prosecutors about it then?
I don't remember specifically when.
How many times did you meet with the prosecutors?
I don't know exactly how many times. As I said, more than 10.
More than 10.
Yes.
So if we split 10 in half, was it during the first 5 or the second 5?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
I'm not exactly sure, maybe the first 5.
But you don't recall specifically which one.
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
You testified previously, withdrawn. It was several meetings before you got a non-prosecution agreement, right?
There were a few meetings before, yes.
More than 10.
No, I don't believe that.
But you spoke with the prosecutors about your supposedly misleading answers during the arbitration prior to getting a non-prosecution agreement. Right?
I believe so, yes.
And in fact you had a meeting with the prosecutors where your lawyer asked you to leave the room, right?
When specifically?
I'm just asking, do you remember any meeting like that?
That I was asked to leave the room?
Yes.
Yes.
Were there more than one meeting like that?
I believe so.
And what was your understanding as to why you were being asked to leave the room?
My attorneys would be talking to the government.
What was your understanding of what they would be discussing with the government?
I don't remember specifically what the topics were at the time.
So your testimony, ma'am, is that you don't remember sitting here today what your lawyers were going to talk to the prosecutors about, right?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Do you remember when you signed your non-prosecution agreement?
A few months back.
I'm sorry.
A few months back.
So this year?
Yes.
Do you remember if you had told them about your misleading statements in the arbitration last year?
Mr. Finkel said, I think this has been asked and answered.
The court said, I'm going to allow this question.
Do you remember?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
So you told them last year, right?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered. We keep circling this.
The court said, sustained.
I'd like to show you, if can we pull up just for the witness, the court and the parties 3533-010. Can we blow that up for the witness, the paragraph that starts at August 1st?
Yes.
You had a second to look that over.
Yes.
Does looking at this refresh your recollection as of the first date your meeting with the prosecutors was?
I'm not exactly sure.
Meeting with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York is a pretty memorable event. Right?
Yes.
Prior to meeting these folks at this table, have you ever met with a prosecutor before?
No.
You were pretty scared when you sat down with them, right?
Pretty nervous.
Because you were worried they might think you had done something wrong, right?
I was worried.
Okay. Worried about what?
About their views.
Their views about what?
My time at G clubs.
And what were you withdrawn? What were you worried about might happen about your time at G clubs?
Can you repeat that?
Let me ask it a different way. Why would you care what the people sitting at this table thought about your work at G Club?
I could get charged of a crime.
And you were worried about that, right?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
That's why you sat down with them, right, 'cause you were worried about being charged. You went to speak to the prosecutors.
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
And when you spoke with them, you had a lawyer, right?
Yes.
And over the course of several meetings, you explained to them about your time at G clubs, right?
Yes.
And you testified on direct that you didn't believe you had committed any crimes while you were at G clubs. Right?
Correct.
But you were still worried that they may charge you with a crime, right?
Yes.
So you were trying to get a way out of that, right?
No.
Well, that's why you met with them to avoid being charged, right?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
So when you met with them, did you tell them that you were afraid of being charged?
I don't recall.
Did they tell you that you might have the prospect of being charged?
Could you repeat that?
Did any of the folks sitting at this table right here tell you during any of your more than 10 meetings with them that you might be facing criminal charges in connection with your time at G clubs?
I'm not exactly sure. I believe I could be charged with criminal charges.
Could you say that first part again?
I don't remember a conversation, but I was aware I could be charged.
It would be pretty frightening to hear from a federal prosecutor that you might be charged with a crime. Right?
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
The court said, asked and answered.
Now ultimately you secured a non-prosecution agreement, correct?
I was provided a non-prosecution agreement.
And you signed it, right?
Yes.
And your lawyer signed it?
Yes.
And one of the people sitting at this table signed it?
Yes.
Why don't we take a look at it? Could we pull up? I guess it's marked GX 3533-50. You recognize this document?
Yes.
Can we flip to the last page, please? That's your signature.
Yes.
That's your lawyer's signature.
Yes.
You signed it just a couple of months ago, right?
Yes.
Mr. Kamraju said, the defense offers GX 3533-50.
Mr. Finkel said, no objection. I don't think it has a GX. It's just 3533-50.
The court said, it is admitted.
Mr. Kamraju said, we can give it a defense number at the end of the day.
Government's Exhibit 3533-50 received in evidence. By Mr. Kamraju.
Can we publish that, please? Let's scroll down to the first paragraph. Could you read the first paragraph?
On the understanding specified below, the Office of the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York will not criminally prosecute Limarie Reyes Molinares for any crimes, except for criminal tax violation, if any, as to which this office cannot and does not make any agreement related to any and all actions taken in connection with her employment at G Clubs and its related entities from in or about December 2020 through on or about March 23, 2023 to the extent Reyes has disclosed such conduct to this office as of the date of this agreement.
What's your understanding as to the scope of protection from criminal prosecution that you enjoy right now?
As long as I tell the truth, I will not be charged.
Let's pull that down for a second, not the whole document, just zoom back out to the bigger one. Let's go to the next paragraph. You see the paragraph starts, moreover. Can you read that first sentence?
Moreover, if Reyes fully complies with the understanding specified in this agreement, no testimony or other information given by her or any other information directly or indirectly derived therefrom will be used against her in any criminal tax prosecution. This agreement does not provide any protection against prosecution for any crimes except as set forth above.
And you testified on direct that you, under this agreement, you have an obligation to testify truthfully. Correct?
Correct.
And if you don't testify truthfully, then this agreement could be null and void, right?
Yes.
It's the government that decides if you testify truthfully, right?
No.
Who decides?
I do.
You do.
Yes.
So if you decide that you testified truthfully and the government disagrees, what happens to your agreement?
It gets nulled.
Sorry.
It gets cancelled.
So they decide, right?
I decide to tell the truth.
Sure. And they decide if it's actually the truth?
They decide if I'm telling the truth.
Now, there have been times during your meetings with them where they have chastised you for not telling the truth, correct?
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Could you repeat the question?
There have been times during your meetings with them where they have chastised you for not telling the truth. Right?
What does chastise?
The court said, did they scold you?
The witness said, could you explain scold?
Well, okay. During a meeting with the prosecutors, Mr. Finkel told you that he didn't think you were telling the truth and reminded you of your obligation under your proffer agreement. Correct?
Could you repeat that?
I'll ask the court reporter to read it back, please.
Record was read.
No, I do not recall that.
And you're aware, are you not? That Mr. Horton told your lawyer that they didn't think you were telling the truth about the arbitration testimony. Right, the gentleman with the beard right there?
I don't remember.
Could we pull up just for the witness 3533 to 0303? If you could read that to yourself, please.
Mr. Finkel said, "Is there a question?"
Mr. Kumraju said, "She's reviewing the document."
Yes.
Does looking at this document refresh your recollection as to whether Mr. Horton ever told your lawyers that they thought you were not being truthful about your arbitration testimony?
Mr. Finkel said, "Objection, this document."
The court said, "The question is whether this document refreshes her recollection. That's the question. You may answer."
I don't remember Mr. Horton.
Okay. We could take it down. Now, you testified that G Clubs had retained a lawyer named Aaron Mitchell. Correct?
Yes.
And that was in connection with the crane situation?
Yes.
Now, on direct you testified that money that was used to buy to the Bugatti. Sorry, that was used to buy the Bugatti came from G Clubs members' payments, right?
Monies for G Clubs came from member payments.
But you testified specifically that the Bugatti payment came from that, right?
Monies came from member payments.
Do you not remember testifying to that just a little while ago?
Mr. Finkel said, asked and answered.
The court said, "Sustained."
All right. Do you remember testifying that the Lamborghini was purchased with money from G Club's members' payments?
Money were received from member payments.
What about the camper van? Do you remember testifying just a little while ago that that was purchased using money from G Club's member payments?
Money was received from member payments.
You testified that you received a salary at G Clubs, right?
Yes.
Was that paid for using money from G Club's member payments?
It was to payroll.
I'm sorry.
It was through payroll and monies came from members' payments.
Now, you also testified that you got a discretionary bonus, right?
What do you mean a discretionary bonus, the yearly bonus?
I'm not referring to the Puerto Rican Christmas bonus, but the other one.
Yes.
The money for that bonus came from the proceeds of the sale of G Club's memberships, right?
I do not know where those funds came from.
How else did G Clubs make money?
Member payment.
If it didn't come from there, where did it come from?
I do not know.
How about the money you spent on G Talks? Did that come from the proceeds of sales of G Club memberships?
Could you repeat that?
You testified on direct that you spent money on G Talks, right?
Yes.
The money you spent on G Talks, did that come from the proceeds of the sale of G Club memberships?
Monies were from member payments, correct.
Now, you testified on direct the member payments, to use your reference. That didn't entitle G Club members to any stock in the company, right?
Correct.
They weren't making an investment into the company, right?
No.
You didn't check with the members about whether you should get a bonus, right?
No, I did not.
Because it wasn't their business, right?
I don't believe so.
G Clubs could decide to give you a bonus, right?
The bonus was provided by Yvette.
Sorry.
The bonus was provided by Yvette.
Yvette paid you personally.
She approved.
And where did the money come from?
I'm not sure.
You didn't clear your salary with the members, right?
Did I clear?
You didn't ask the members if it was okay to get a salary, right?
No.
Even though your salary was coming from the member payments, right?
Correct. It was our operations.
'Cause the member payments were G Club's revenue, right?
Yes.
It's no different than your company Sprinkle, right? Let me break it down. Your company is an event planning business, your current one.
Yes.
You plan events for people, right?
Yes.
They pay you money to do it, right?
Yes.
You're the owner of the business, right?
Yes.
You then decide how to spend that money, right?
Yes.
Harun, he was the owner of G Clubs, right?
Yes.
So it's his decision how to spend that money, right?
Yes.
It's his decision if he wants to buy a Ferrari, right?
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
The court said you may answer.
He provide instructions.
His decision if he wants to buy a Lamborghini, right?
He provided the instructions for us to execute.
His decision if he wants to buy a mansion in New Jersey, right?
I'm not aware of that.
His decision if he wants to make an investment in Hamilton, right?
His instructions.
None of that has anything to do with the G Club's members, right?
Mr. Finkel said, objection, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Kumraju said, no further questions.
The court said redirect.
Redirect examination. By Mr. Finkel.
Ms. Reyes, at Sprinkle events do you promise that your clients will receive stock in Sprinkles?
No, I did not.
You were asked other places you worked at. Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
Did any of the other places you worked at send $5 million to Kyrgyzstan after their money was seized by the United States government?
No.
You were asked some questions about G Club's benefits. Were you a member of G Club?
No, I was not.
Did you recommend to your friends that they should become members of G Club?
No, I did not.
Did you recommend to your family members that they should purchase a membership in this G Club that you were working at?
No, I did not.
If we can pull up SH-150, please. When you went to the Sherry Netherlands, did Miles show you these pins?
I don't recall seeing this.
We can take that down. Refund request withdrawn. Member complaints. Were there complaints from members throughout your time period at G Club?
Yes.
What were the nature of those complaints?
They were different, refund request, and amongst those different reasons.
What were the reasons that members sought refund request?
They thought it was investment, not having enough benefit.
Did that happen through your whole period at G Clubs?
I recall specific time period.
Did it happen when you were CO?
Yes.
When did you become CO?
Summer 2021.
The hotels that Defense Counsel showed you on cross-examination that you saw in London. Did that hotel company engage with G Club?
No, they did not.
Whose idea was it to withdraw? Did Alex H. tell you that the loans were not repaid?
Mr. Kumraju said, objection, hearsay.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Mr. Finkel said, withdrawn. Did Alex H. tell you that the loan to BVI and other entities were being repaid?
Mr. Kumraju said, same objection.
The court said you may answer.
They were not being paid.
They were not being paid?
Correct.
That's what Alex told you.
They had not been paid.
If we could pull up GC 157, please. You remember being asked some questions about what would happen when a member's payments weren't made and their membership would lapse?
Could you repeat that, please?
Ms. Loftus, can you zoom in on the bottom? Can you read this email from Alex H. to you on June 28, 2021, beginning with, attached you will find.
Attached you will find spreadsheet that James was kind enough to organize for us containing breakdown of all the Square transactions paid unpaid. I believe we have extended a long enough grace period for members to repay and keep their memberships. As controller, it is my recommendation we cancel and void all outstanding memberships that have not been repaid. I simply wanted to run this by you first so we are in agreement. I have discussed this with Yvette yesterday.
What asks your understanding of why Alex discussed this issue with Yvette?
Mr. Kumraju said, objection.
The court said, overruled.
She would be asked about different topics of the business.
Where did Yvette work?
New York.
If we can pull up GXGC 175. These emails that you sent to Mr. He, like this one containing the loan documentation or asset documentation. The body of the email, how did you write it?
It was like an extract from the different documents.
The court said, did you mean excerpt?
The witness said, like I extracted.
The court said, extracts you're saying?
The witness said, I extracted word from the loan documents.
When did you meet my son? What year?
2021.
How long did you meet with him for?
Just for that dinner.
How long was that dinner?
Couple of hours.
That's the only time you saw him?
Yes.
Do you see on your screen HN28?
Yes.
You see date of issue at the bottom left?
Yes.
What's the date of issue?
November 3rd, 2014.
So 7 years before you saw my son on the boat?
Yes.
You can take that down. You can pull up GXGC 93. This is an email from you. Is that correct, to Yvette?
Yes.
And can you read the first sentence after Dear Yvette?
Please find attached the design options for G Club member physical card and packaging for your review and Mr. Gw's feedback.
Why did you send an email to Yvette seeking Mr. Gw's feedback?
I was told that the original designs had been reviewed by him and there was an interest to have a titanium physical card.
But why did you send it to Yvette seeking Mr. Gw's feedback?
Mr. Kumraju said, asked and answered.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
I would seek Yvette's approval in different matters.
You say for your review and Mr. Gw's feedback. This email is not sent to Mr. Gwa. Why did you send it to Yvette seeking Mr. Gw's feedback?
Mr. Kumraju said, same objection.
The court said, sustained.
If we could put up GC 541. You remember you were asked some questions about Mr. Gw's consulting agreement?
Yes.
And it's dated October 15th, 2020 at the top?
Yes.
Go to the next page, please, Ms. Loftus. You see where it says consideration?
Yes.
It says level 5 membership?
Yes.
Does it say Red Limbo Aventador?
No.
Does it say Bugatti?
No.
Does it say $10 million for my son?
No.
Does it say a house that cost $26 million in Mahwah, New Jersey?
Mr. Kumraju said, object to form.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
No.
Go back to the first page, Ms. Loftus. And this is October 15th, 2020, correct?
Yes.
Can we pull up Z9 and go to page 57? This is October 13th, 2020. You see that in the left corner?
Yes.
Can you scroll down a little bit, Ms. Loftus? You remember being asked to read pieces of this during cross-examination?
Yes.
Scroll down a little bit. And you read how Gwa had said that you don't get stock in G clubs. That was the segment that you were asked to read. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Can you read the last paragraph at the bottom of page 58?
To put it bluntly, this is all nonsense. I'll be straightforward with you. This is what we need to have to legally avoid Me Too, but don't think that we are being mingy here. There is no other way. We'd have to have that.
Go to page 101 of this document, please. Who is that a picture of?
Mr. Gwa.
And what's the date on the left?
June 23rd, 2021.
Can you scroll down, please? Can you read the bottom paragraph?
A couple of days ago, our G Club president Limarie, who has a very tiny face in real life, gorgeous, came to New York for meetings. Our Limarie and Wen Xiao also interviewed Brother Seven about the future planning of the G Club.
You can stop right there. Can you zoom out of that, Ms. Loftus, and can you scroll down a little bit? Can you zoom in on the paragraph that says a month ago? Can you read beginning of where it says that I proposed?
Then I proposed a condition to allow our G Club members to buy their car at the best price in the world. They said that they would discuss it again, and will have to wait a little longer. Think about the G Club membership now. You know that back then it was purchased in 2 tiers. 10,000 USD and 50,000 USD. Now for those of you who bought the tier of 10,000 USD, you have a 1,000 shares. And for those of you who bought the tier of 50,000 USD, and you have 500,000 shares, and then you have a lifetime access to the card. There's nothing else I can say.
Ms. Reyes, when someone bought a $10,000 membership in G Clubs, did they get a 100,000 shares?
Not that I was not aware of.
We can zoom out of that, and please go to page 111. Can you scroll up a little bit please, Ms. Loftus? Who is that a picture of?
Mr. Gov't.
Can you scroll down to 114, please, Ms. Loftus? Can you start reading from, "We will have all investors"?
We will have all investors in G Club, all investors now who are currently set at 50,000. When paying $50,000 for the membership card, you will have 10,000 shares of G Fashion in the future. At the time of the IPO, you'll have 10,000 shares of G Fashion, but then these days there are so many fellow fighters sending me messages. They all express their wishes saying, "Mr. Gov't, I only have 30,000, can I buy a G Club card?" Yes. I have 40,000. Can I buy G Club card? Yes. But I've been thinking, the people who haven't spent 50,000, can they get 10,000 shares? It's like giving them 10,000 shares for free, right? I mean that when it goes public, you have to pay $1 per share for 10,000 shares, it's $10,000. But think about it. Those who pay $40,000 or $30,000 won't be allocated shares, which is not fair. The poorer the fellow fighters, the more care we have to render, right? This is not good. This is not good at all. So I was thinking how to get this fellow fighters to own the shares, which is the only question.
You can stop right there. Ms. Reyes, did you refer to G Club's members as investors?
No.
Mr. Finkel said, nothing further.
Mr. Kumraju said, I can be done in 2 minutes.
The court said, okay, go ahead.
Recross-examination. By Mr. Kumraju.
Do you remember Mr. Finkel asked you if you recommended G Clubs to any of your friends?
Yes.
Are any of your friends high net worth Chinese individuals?
No.
Are any of your friends active in Chinese politics?
No.
Are any of your friends anti-CCP?
No.
Mr. Kumraju said, I'm done. Thank you, Your Honor.
Redirect examination. By Mr. Finkel.
The hotels in Puerto Rico that you were asked about. Do those hotels have anything to do with the Chinese Communist Party?
No.
Mr. Finkel said, nothing further.
The court said, you may step out.
Witness excused.
The court said, members of the jury, the good news is that we have ended for the day and you have tomorrow off. You will be returning on Thursday ready to walk into the courtroom at 9:30. Remember that you're not allowed to talk about the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Don't permit anyone to talk about the case in your presence. Don't read, listen or watch anything from any source having to do with the subject matter of this case. Have a good day off.
The law clerk said, jury exiting.
Jury not present. Continued on next page. Jury not present.
The court said, please be seated. Is there anything before we resume on Thursday morning?
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, just briefly, and this may come up with other witnesses. The reason I objected regarding the disclaimer in the membership agreement pertains to Your Honor's ruling. Your Honor decided that it is proper and fair for the defense to question victims about whether the disclaimers made representations by the defendant not material, or sort of seek to underline the materiality of what the defendant said. Your Honors ruled on that. Ms. Reyes did not invest in G clubs. She did not invest in any of Gov's investment offerings. For that reason, it occurred to us that based on Your Honor's ruling, it would be improper to suggest to the jury that, as Your Honor put it, there's a fine line between properly asking about an investor's sophistication and improperly implying to the jury that the investor should have found out the truth about the alleged misrepresentations. Which is to say that by Mr. Gwa saying in videos that he was offering stock, if the investor member or victim went to the website and saw the disclaimer, they should have known this was fine. Mr. Reyes being used as a vehicle to sort of plaster the disclaimer. The government views as improper, and in contrary to Your Honor's ruling. That ship has sailed. But in an appropriate time, and if this comes up again, I expect that we'll ask for some sort of instruction. Cause the government is concerned that the jury is confused about how to consider these disclaimers. And while it's fair for them to consider them, as Your Honor has already ruled, as an issue of materiality for the victims, it's improper for them to consider it as a reason why victims should not have been defrauded. And that was the reason for my objection.
The court said, "But are you saying that only a victim can be questioned about these disclaimers? Are you saying that a non-victim should not be questioned about this?"
Mr. Finkel said, "I think it depends. Really, the devil is in the details." The way the questions were posed to Ms. Reyes were just reading the disclaimer and saying in effect, and forgive me if I'm misquoting, the member saw this, member knew this, something to that effect. That's what I recall. I do think that's improper to Ms. Reyes. She can't speak to what members saw. I think the purpose of those questions was to plant a seed in the jury's mind that because the disclaimer is there, it undermines the government's proof. As Your Honor ruled, the disclaimer has a purpose in the consideration of the matters before them. It's a specific purpose. And so the government is concerned that the jury is confused about what that purpose is.
Mr. Kamraju said, Your Honor, while I am sure that the government is concerned about evidence undermines its proof. The law is that materiality is determined by the totality of information available to the potential investors. That's TSC v. Basic Industries and US v. Litvac. And that a jury is supposed to consider the totality of information in deciding whether a particular statement is material or not material for purposes of the securities law or the wire fraud statute. There is no ruling by the court that I'm aware of that says that a witness cannot authenticate one of the disclaimers. Which is what happened with Ms. Reyes. Your Honor gave a limiting instruction. Your Honor is going to give instructions as to the law which will clear up any confusion that the jury might have. Especially since they're not supposed to be deliberating now anyway. And now this is the second or third time I believe that the government has now asked for this similar limiting instruction. So I would say that given that the jury is entitled to consider the total mix of information, and given that at least I don't believe I did anything to suggest that this was a reliance argument or ask Ms. Reyes any question about whether G Club's purchasers should be able to rely on the disclaimer. I don't think there's an issue, and I think Your Honor ruling was correct. And it should come in the same way through other witnesses whether they're victims or non-victims.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, first of all, a lot of what defense counsel said, not all of it. But a lot of what defense counsel said is correct. But he avoided the issue that the government is complaining about. In the government's view, and this is reading from Your Honor's ruling. This is docket 319 at page 17. The government sought to preclude certain evidence and certain arguments because from arguing that victims were negligent or insufficiently vigilant, meaning there should be no suggestion, and this is the law. And defense counsel has not stated otherwise. The jury shouldn't think, oh, wait a second. They had the disclaimer on the website. And if Ming Yang would just went to the disclaimer and saw the disclaimer, this wouldn't have happened to her. It's her fault. And that's not the law. And that's defense counsel has not suggested otherwise. So while defense counsel is correct that the full mix of information may be relevant to materiality, meaning the materiality of Gov's statements, it should not be used for an improper purpose. So the government's request for an instruction is consistent with what defense counsel just said, which is to deliver to them the law so they know how to assimilate this information that's coming at them because they don't know.
The court said, so my sense is that Mr. Kamraju was merely pointing to the disclaimer, not making a reliance argument. And I will in the jury charge make very explicit what the law is, and I think that that is adequate as opposed to a limiting instruction in the middle of the trial.
Mr. Kamraju said, thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Finkel said, understood.
The court said, anything further?
Mr. Kamraju said, nothing from the defense, Your Honor.
Mr. Finkel said, nor the government, Your Honor. See you on Thursday.
Adjourned to June 20th, 2024 at 9 a.m.